your beliefs are not set in stone. You think they're set in stone, and then you're thrown in these drastic environments, and they change, and the course of action that you're willing to take change. So what I was looking at after Ramadi 1 is, holy crap, at what point, one, is your moral compass lost? Two, how far are you willing to go to reach that end objective? Because you can always get there, but what are you willing to do to get there? You can always stop the nuclear weapon if you lock down everything in the United States. If we gave up every civil liberty, we'd be the safest nation in the world.
So you saw this movie, The Siege, as a kind of a moral drama.
Right, and the movie sucked, but it did trigger something in me to where, I couldn't sleep that night, and I was...
And this was in the January 07 time frame?
No, this was literally, this must have been June 06. And so at that point, I started saying, okay, I need to change myself. I need to start taking a look at where we need to go. So I started researching counterinsurgency a lot more. I started researching insurgency a lot more. I started
reading. Researching a lot previous to that?
No. A little, but not really, because I was concentrating on combat. That's what I was concentrating on, and that's what the Marine Corps prepared me for. At IOC back then, we didn't really talk about this stuff. It wasn't an issue. We were still talking about the invasion. We talked about Fallujah a lot, and so that was where our mindset was, take down the house, blow it up with a small, call in air, and then pick up the pieces. That's what we were preparing for. But so I started changing a little bit, but I kept it to myself because the weapons guys, it wasn't soon enough, and I didn't get set in stone enough. When you brief something like that to your Marines, like a 180 in counterculture, you better be sure about it, and you better know what you're talking about. And I wasn't. So in December, I didn't know I was getting a new platoon yet. I knew we were reorganizing, and I didn't know we were getting a new platoon in December. So I wrote this like 100-page PowerPoint on counterinsurgency, and I didn't deliver it yet. But I spent a lot of time writing, and this is when I was reading all those things that I've made them read in the future. I was reading the Arab line, I was reading about Arab custom, I was trying to learn Iraqi Arabic, and I was trying to learn insurgency and then vice counterinsurgency. So when I got this new platoon...
Not to interrupt you, but during the 05-06 deployment, you're trading these emails with your philosophy professors at Georgetown. Can you give us some of the substance to that? How it shaped your thinking?
Yeah, it was. I was explaining the difficulties of dealing with this kind of violence of action and the rationale behind it, and the kind of intricacies of Georgetown Morrow now being transplanted to Ramadi Lieutenant Mujica, and how the two mesh somewhere in the middle, and how, because they are two, in a sense they're two different people, but the ideas and the moral framework of your previous being obviously plays into the military being. So the basis was a little aimless, like, here's what I'm doing, and we would kind of write back about this, and she'd say, oh my god, this stuff's incredible. And so we ended up talking about a lot. I didn't know where I was going with it though. Then I started dealing with the stuff, and then I started reading and seeing the movie and all that.
There's other stuff we talked about.
Right. And then
taking you up to the 100-page PowerPoint at the end of 06.
And then I got a new platoon in January. And then I was like, all right, I feel confident enough. I have this document. I have a good enough framework to brief this. And I did not want to brief it to the platoon. I knew for a fact that it was too different, and I had to brief it to the NCOs first, because I'm not going to convince Joe PFC this. I can educate them, I can push it down their throats, I can do all sorts of stuff. But at the end of the day, if the NCOs aren't buying it, it doesn't matter.
And so by this point, you were a first lieutenant,
mm-hmm.
and this was your second platoon.
Yeah.
So maybe have
Yeah. Second Lieutenant Mujica would have never done this. Second Lieutenant Mujica would have said, Eureka, I'll tell everyone about this, and it would have failed miserably. So by this point, I had a little more G2, and I knew that how Marines worked a little better. And so I briefed it to these guys, but I didn't brief it to them. I didn't brief it at all. And I didn't really know where we were going. I knew the ideas I had. I knew we needed change, but I didn't know actually executional, how we were going to execute this. So I brought them on, and it was literally, okay, what did you get out of this book? And so they would start briefing these things, and all of them were vets, except
so you assigned them the books to read, do reports.
To do reports, and they were going to brief me, and they had essays pretty much. They had papers that they briefed back to me, and they briefed back to me, and it was a Q&A, and it was like, well, the insurgent tries to do this, and then we'd go, fuck, oh man, they did that in Ramadi, and we played into their hand. The insurgent will try to get you to mass superior firepower on him, and he'll escape, and you'll blow up a school. Oh, duh, like, we're idiots. Of course, we did that, whatever. So,
and you, when we first talked here today, we talked a little bit about Sergeant Humphrey being groomed, and this gets back into a theme we've talked about with Major Quinn's idea of developing talent.
Right.
In that interview, it was he developing Sergeant Mejia.
Right.
How would you say in detail you develop Sergeant Humphrey as talent?
Okay, well, Sergeant Humphrey at this point, this was only 2 weeks from having the platoon, so I was starting to pick up that he was good. It was at that meeting that he distinguished himself, because right away he got it, and he was like, yes, we need to change. And at that point, we got a bond where, all right, we're going to make this happen. And it was at that table, we literally came up with a plan. We need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. And he was a huge proponent of it, and the other guys were, but he was a vocal proponent of it, and he said, yes, let's do this. So I started seeing this, and one of the big things we identified was we need to be split up, and we need to work in smaller teams. And so what that means to me is I need me when I'm not around. So I said, Humphrey's the guy then. So Humphrey will be the guy who's me, or eventually he'll be better than me, which he is. So how did I do it? A lot of stress training. I tried to do IOC model. I did certain events that we do during IOC. I placed him through those, just dealing with stress.
And what specifically?
We don't talk about IOC, but I won't talk about that specific event, but I'll talk about we were in Mount Town, and I gave him the mobile section because I thought we'd still have a mobile section back then. And I gave him the whole section. I said, all right, you got it. And I used to sit behind him, screaming at him, literally screaming at him, 30 million contradictory instructions, orders. You're taking fire from the east. You're taking fire from the west. You got a casualty to the left. You got, things that no one could possibly grasp. But I wanted him to get used to the sensory overload. I used to wake him up sometimes in the middle of the night and task him out real fast. And we'll leave it at that. But just a lot of what people would say, oh, you're messing with this kid. No, it was never about that. I'd always explain to him afterwards what I was trying to do. And what I got, and what he got out of it is he became very confident in his own abilities, and he got very good. And so then I would back off, and then, so I wouldn't sit right behind him, I'd be on the radio.